episode of Dskate presents Gametime, we sit down with Donald Balmforth. Donald is the head physiotherapist for the NHL Montreal Canadiens while living with type 1 diabetes. Enjoy! Welcome to Gametime presented by Dskate. I'm your host, Anissa Gamble. Our goal at Gametime is to promote diabetes awareness within the athletic community throughout a series of interviews. And today we sit down with Donald Balmforth.
My name is Donald Balmforth. I've been type 1 diabetic since I was 6, and I am now the head physical therapist of the Montreal Canadiens.
First thing, how and why did you get into physiotherapy?
So I realized that I wanted to be a therapist later on in life. In Quebec, we have CEGEP, which is after high school. And it was only really in CEGEP that I created that goal. I was always in the sciences, knew that I love science. I love the idea of helping someone, but I didn't really find my fit. I was always playing sports, whether it's organized or recreational. And one of the sports I loved was hockey, and I played house league. And being house league means that I wasn't going to make a career out of being an athlete, but it gave me the opportunity to play with older players. So I was kind of bumped up in the age groups. And in junior, I was 16, and I got to play with older players who were 20, 21, and I got to play with a coach who coached me in bantam. And here I am, the little guy trying to fit in, and he had an amazing slap shot. Peter, thank you. And I decided to block a shot in practice and, kind of make your space on the team and prove yourself to a certain degree. And I broke my foot. So I went over, I was introduced to physio, and, before that it was kind of like put up with your bumps and bruises, and I couldn't put up with this. I had to see a physio, and I thought it was so cool. Like, she was so intelligent, and she was able to work with a university football team. And I thought, that's amazing. And I'm looking at all these anatomy charts, and I'm like, all of this? Like, every ligament and muscle in the body. And her assessment just thoroughly impressed me. And I realized, like, wow, could you imagine doing that as an occupation? So that kind of all came together in CEGEP, where I realized, like, I can make this my goal. Like, that could be me. And the idea of waking up every morning and helping somebody is pretty rewarding. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. I always give the biggest kudos to my physiotherapists for just being so intelligent and then putting up with us complaining.
We always say in the athletic world, whether it's a physio or an athletic therapist, osteo, we always want to put people in front of us, and that's something that I take with pride. Like, we're there to help people, and that's not so much an occupation, but that's a way of life. And I like to think that that's what draw me to physio is helping people.
So with that, can you just say where you went to school and your credentials?
Yeah, so I graduated McGill University in 2004 with a bachelor's in physical therapy. I worked with the McGill Redmen football team for 3 seasons over there. And I took a conference about university is great, but they don't really talk about what to do after you graduate. So I went to a conference held by McGill, but not within the academic world, and different options, public versus private versus a specialty. And I was introduced to a therapist who was the head therapist for the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL. And he had a private clinic. He wasn't looking to hire anyone. And here he was donating his time to come back to speak to students, to represent the private clinic, even though he had no interest in doing it other than helping somebody. So he was really cool in giving a different perspective on what else is out there besides working in the public system. And after the conference, a classmate of mine who had done a stage with him introduced me to him. Thank you, Kim. That was a great introduction. And we just got along great. And it turned into a position with the Montreal Alouettes. I was consulting with them for 4 years. And it was just a phenomenal experience. And when I graduated, it was kind of a part-time gig. So I worked full-time in a private clinic. And this was the clinic that Scott worked at. And we both left the clinic at the same time. We both left the Alouettes at the same time. And I started down a different career path. And I went with Dave Campbell at Concordia Physio Sport here in Montreal. And he kind of took me under his wing and showed me a little bit of a different side of therapy through an osteo approach. And I really liked it. I really liked how the physio and the osteo, when we worked together with clients, really got some added benefits. And he was working with the Montreal Canadiens, and there was a special project that he thought that I could help out with. And he introduced me to the head therapist, Graham Reinband, and it worked out well. The player got better, and it created a position with me with the team.
Wow, that's quite the story.
So I always say there's a difference between a good therapist, an intelligent therapist, a good person, an intelligent person. And I was lucky enough to have these mentors along the way that were first and foremost great people, selfless people who were able to share their thought process, who respected, when we would challenge each other and say, okay, I don't fully agree with this. And we would have great professional debates, but they were open-minded. They shared all their information and they really helped groom me. They helped give me such a great toolbox and helped me develop a diversified skill set now.
That's awesome. So with that being said, and now where you are today, what does a typical day look like?
Yeah, days are 24 hours, I'll tell you that. Sleep is not a big part of that. So a typical day, so we don't work like Monday to Sundays. We don't have a 7 or 5 day work week. It's as you know, it's game day, practice day, travel day, maybe a day off. But as a therapist, like most of the time somebody's coming in for therapy. So we're a great group with the Canadiens. We have 2 athletic therapists, 2 physical therapists, massage therapists, osteopathy. We're a well-knit group. So mornings start off with our typical roundtable group meeting on what the day-to-day events are and what our goals are of the day. I'll call the players projects, what our projects are, what our priorities are of the day, and players start funneling in. And we typically have 3 categories of players. So the first category is injuries. Players that are not able to play. Then we have players who are hurt. That means they have either pain and or restriction that prevent them to fully perform, but they're healthy and safe enough to be in the lineup. And then we have the fun one, which is prevention and performance, where you don't necessarily have a specific complaint, but we're still trying to get you better. So we start in the day with the injured players. That can be manual therapy on the table. That could be, in the pool, in the gym, on the ice. We get them through their training session. And then we have our players who need a little bit of work or prevention performance right before practice. Then we cover practice, do a little bit of paperwork. We're not all on the bench, so we try to rotate, do a little bit of paperwork. And then after practice, it's kind of like, hey, so how did practice go? And do a follow-up treatment. And we wrap up probably about 3-4 p.m. in the afternoon. Unless it's a game day. If it's a game day, we're actually at the rink 3.5 hours before the puck drops. So, 3.5 hours before, 2.5 hours-ish for the game, and 2 to 3 hours after the game. It's not uncommon for us to leave after midnight at the rink. So that's a common day. That's the usual day.
That's a long day. Like even as a player, like a game day is like, you wake up and you go to pregame skate and you come back and then you got video and then pregame meal and then you get to the rink. And then after the game, like it's not just like a quick 2-hour game and you're done. So that's everyone, like from the physiotherapist to your media to your coach. Like it's a big endeavor for a game.
They are long days, but they're rewarding, and it's different ups and downs. It's like you have the client that you're working with, the athlete that you're working with. You have an immediate goal, which is just part of a long-term goal, and then you have prepping guys for the morning skate, and then you have the morning skate, and so there's always these little goals that just renew your energy throughout the day and keep you going. And as you know, game time's game time, so that's always fun and exciting, gets the adrenaline going. And then after the game, it's kind of like, how do we prepare for the next game? Let's start now. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. They're long days, but they go by quick. Yeah,
they definitely do. So with that, what is it like to work with these elite NHL players like Max Domi?
So I've always said I like working with athletes and geriatric population. And the similarity is that there's many similarities. But the big similarity is that they're the most motivated clientele that I can work with as a physio. they want to get better. They have goals. And so if you're older, your goals are, hey, I just want to be able to do activities of daily life, and I need to walk a certain speed to get across the road, and I need to get out to do my groceries. And athletes are very similar. They don't want to be at 92%. They need to be as close to 100% as possible, and they work like crazy for it. So as a therapist, it's so rewarding to be in that team environment. And Max is no exception. Like, man, when I think of Max, I think of passion. You know, his dad, and being a son of a professional player, and getting diabetes at a tough, adolescent age. Like, he was forced to mature in many ways really early, and I think it shows in the kind of young man that he's become. So it's a pleasure to work with him. He's so serious and dedicated. Very, very easy to work with in the therapy world.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't met him yet, so hopefully someday, but I've heard nothing but great things with him, and got to train with some NHL players growing up, and they're just all such great guys, and just so professional, and just so passionate and determined. So that's so much fun. I'm really jealous.
Yeah.
So my final question for this period is, what's the most fascinating aspect of physiotherapy?
So I always say this. So I like teaching. I like taking on students, and I always tell them. I always say, people. You can have very successful people in the business world, and when they walk into work, they have to hold the door for someone, to do something nice for someone. And I tell my students, you're going to have like clients that are a little bit heavier to treat, a little bit harder to treat, and you're going to look at your schedule, and you're going to see where those clients are, and you're going to go, oh, geez, I got so and so at 2:00, and they're on your mind until you get over that tougher appointment. But the reality is, everyone you see in a day is an opportunity to help someone. And I tell my students, you don't know how often your name is going to be repeated out of other people's mouths. It's a true blessing to be able to help people. So that's the most fascinating part of my job. It's really cool because you're never in a fog. You've kind of seen it all before. You've worked really hard. You've educated yourself to have an understanding, a base, a knowledge to help people. But everyone's different. Every injury is different. And what are your previous injuries? How does it affect this one? So there's always this. You're never bored. You're never in a fog where you don't know what to do, and you're never like, oh yeah, okay, this is another MCL. Like, here we go. Like, it's always exciting. It's always you're dealing with different personalities. It's really rewarding and a lot of fun.
Maybe I'll switch career paths and go into physiotherapy now.
Well, if you go down the dentistry road, you're going to be in the same boat helping people. But it's the same thing. Prevention, performance, right? You do your prevention stuff. That's where people don't want to come in, and it's like, oh, geez, do you know how valuable this is? And then when they need you, it's like, you know what, hit the fan. And they're like, please help me. Like, I'm in trouble, and they're in pain, and you got to make the best out of a difficult situation. But it's very similar, different technique, but very, very similar drive behind it.
I'm looking forward to that. Maybe I can join you with the Canadiens.
I won't tell our dentist.
Yeah. When were you first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes?
I was diagnosed when I was 6. And I think that's a really good age. Like, it's tough because you're so young. I have great memories, like little spot memories before I had diabetes, but I don't know life before diabetes. Like, my day-to-day has always been with the diabetes routine, and I take that as a blessing. I don't have anything to compare it to. This is just the way of life. And I think it would be very difficult, like Max diagnosed later on in life. Like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, dude, that must have been so hard. Like, hormones are changing, you're turning into a man, you're growing up, you got this thrown at you. Like, holy moly, that must be tough. So I was diagnosed at 6, and looking back, I wouldn't change it. I think that was a blessing.
Yeah. I was diagnosed when I was 8, and kind of the same ordeal. I don't really remember before. And I love talking with people who've been diagnosed later on. My uncle just got diagnosed a couple of years ago, and he's like 46 when he was diagnosed. And so just talking about like how different the change of the routine is. And I don't know if there's a good or bad age.
Never a good age.
Yeah. So with that, today, what kind of diabetes devices do you use to manage it?
That's a great question. I love this because I'm so, like, I went to a conference once, and I was in a huge room, and it was more of like a sales conference, but to the public. It was an information, but obviously pharma sponsoring it. And he starts going backwards with, okay, who's using like an electric meter to test your blood sugars? And then it was like, okay, who remembers this? And it was the strips, and you'd have to like put blood on a strip, wait exactly 1 minute, not longer, not less, wipe it off. Then you'd have to wait a couple of minutes, and that was precise as well. And then you'd have to match the colors onto a color on the side of the packaging. And it was like, oh yeah, okay, half the room's hands went down. And I was like, oh geez, I'm getting kind of old over here. and then he says, who remembers this as testing how your blood sugars are? And he holds up ketones, like urinary ketone strips. And like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's before my era. Like that hand came down. But I was like, wow, advancements in diabetes have just been crazy. Can you imagine waiting till you have like sugar in your urine and ketones to go, oh geez, I'm high? Like, it's just been amazing, the advancements that we've had with managing this disease. So I love this question. I'm very passionate about the two devices that I use. I have an Omnipod, which is a tubeless insulin delivery system. I was pre-pump era, right? So when the pump came out, it was like, do you want to try this pump? And I was skeptical. And I remember being like an older adolescent, young adult going, geez, like, I got to take this off the shower. I shower once, twice a day. Like, geez, I can't go swimming with it. Like, can you imagine like adult activities? Like, I pictured it like with the IV pole, just holding the pump, and I was like, geez, if I have to take it off, then man, like, why am I even having this thing? So the Omnipod is great. You can shower with it. I can get on the ice with it, with the guys. The insulin is just hugged to your body, and you have a remote control that delivers insulin, and it just helps me so much in managing my diabetes. And the other one is the Dexcom 6. I was on the Dexcom 5 and I liked it, and it had its challenges. And Max introduced me to the technology of the Dexcom 6. He's like, man, like, I was on the 5 and it's great product. And he's like, the 6 just ups its game, and it looked the same. It didn't really look like they made much advances. And wow, like I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I use the Dexcom too, and like it's such a game changer. Like it's so crazy. But that's so cool you say that. Like even like I was a kid, CGMs never existed. Like I'm not that old, and I'm like, and my grandmother had type 1 as well, and I got to see her insulin pump, and I kid you not, she had to wear a backpack with it, and I was like, what? Yeah. And then now like we have closed loop systems, and the like advancements is just incredible. It's so cool. So on top of that, you're a father. You have 2 kids. You have James, who's 5, Nolan, who's 2. How do you manage that as being a father with type 1 and being a family?
The secret to success. I mean, we're blessed. Not all families can do this, but I got to say it starts with my wife. Like, she's a pillar. I'm in a huge profession. I'm living the dream. I'm really enjoying it. It comes with its struggles, and she's just a pillar of support. And she's the foundation of this family, and I'm blessed to have found her. I don't know what I did to get her, but I got her, and it starts with that. And she's just amazing. Gave me 2 beautiful kids. She's helped nurturing them and helping them grow. And I always say she's the most important part of this family, and she's kind of taking me along for the ride, and I really appreciate it. So I love it. The hardest part about being a diabetic dad with 2 kids is that fear, and it's a true fear. And many people helped me prepare for diabetes, and I had a great endocrinologist, great nursing staff. My endocrinologist that I had actually was a pediatric endocrinologist who turned to the adult population when I turned 18. So she just recently retired, but I had the same endo my whole life with Dr. Schifrin, like, woo. So it was amazing. But nobody prepared me for that fear. So the first time you go out on a sunny beach and your kid's thirsty and he's peeing a lot, it's like, oh my gosh, like blood sugars, let's have a quick test here. Like, there's always that fear that they get it. That's something that I'll say, haunts me a little bit. And I'm always worried about that, the occasional bedwetting at 3 years old. And it's like, oh boy, okay, that's 1, 2, and we're making some phone calls,
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I know I talked to my father. His mother had type 1, and then I have type 1. And, he talks about that fear when I was a kid as well. And luckily we caught it early because he could see those signs and symptoms. So with that, do you have any advice for fathers to, I guess, overcome or to continue on?
You know what? There's little blessings too, eh? Like there's little fun stuff. Like, I'll be having a juice or something, or I'll be having something sweet, and I don't have a sweet tooth, right? We all know that, like, geez, that's to bring your blood sugar up. So some of us, we don't really, have as much of a sweet tooth as other people. I looked at it more of medication kind of thing. And so he'll see me have a sweet and he'll go, "Daddy, how are your blood sugars?" Like it's just great. So yeah, there's challenges, but you got to enjoy the good moments and the little blessings. This morning I had my pump out, right? Changing the routine a little bit this morning. So I'm playing with my basal rate and I left it on the coffee table. So he comes out and he says, "Daddy, you're doing your blood sugars, you're changing insulin." Like, he's 5. Like, how awesome is that, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely blessings in there.
That's awesome. So what are some aspects of your diabetes that you wish everyone would know?
Diabetes is, I'm going to be very professional here and say that diabetes is a shitty disease. And when you meet other healthcare professionals, like, they're all like, "Oh, you're diabetic. Geez." It comes with its challenges. It comes with its day-to-day challenges, but it also comes with complications. And they come, and we're trying to ward them off and minimize them, but they're tough. Having said that, diabetes doesn't stop you from doing anything. I know people who've had experience with friends, family who are diabetic way back then, let's say a generation or 2 generations ago. And I still get the look like, you're having, like, cake and it has icing and you're diabetic. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to do 2 units of insulin. Like, I'm not eating ideal. Like, geez, calm down. Yeah. So it doesn't prevent us from doing anything, whether it's the small things, whether it's the big things, professionally, academically, athletically, doesn't prevent us from doing anything. You just have to know that balancing act, and you have to know the game, and you got to be able to play the game well.
That's so true. I love the aspect that you said about, like, eating something. I also have celiac disease. So, like, I'll be eating something, and then the amount of times that people like, "Can you eat that?" And I'm like, I'm eating it. Like, like,
I hope so.
Yeah, no, we'll find out.
Yeah. I love that. Here's my insulin pump. You tell me, okay?
Yeah. Welcome back to Dskate Game Time. Donald, how has the pandemic affected you thus far?
Geez, like everyone else, March 12th was like, okay, the NHL just called, and we should all be sent home. and it was like, we have a game tonight, and it's like, we'll keep you posted, but it doesn't look good. So things shut down. We long hours at the rink, many days away during the season. And all of a sudden, it all goes out the window, and we're told to self-quarantine as best as possible at home. So it was kind of like, geez, I know this ain't going to be hours or days, but is this going to be weeks or months? And, the world gets flipped literally upside down. And here we are at home and doing Zoom meetings and, trying to coordinate health of players from a distance. And our periodization is all off. Like, are we preparing to play in 2 weeks, in 2 months? We're obviously going to have a shortened off season. So how quickly are we going to have to ramp back up? So all of these questions without the answers, it's tough. The world was flipped upside down.
It's so crazy. It's like being like a call up. Like, you're just waiting for that call. And you keep prepared anytime.
Literally. And it's, one thing gets answered and 2 other questions come up. And I love how all the organizations are being methodical and coming up with the best possible plan. But it's difficult. The answers aren't easy.
How are some ways that you're keeping active while self-isolating?
Well, it was great at the beginning. You catch up on a lot of paperwork, and then you get a little stir crazy. The blessing is I get to spend more time with the family, which I don't normally get to do. Normally it's the off season, and we have different development camps, and we have league meetings, so it's always sporadic, the time with the family. So we're just trying to take advantage of day-to-day activities, and it's less flashy activities. It's not like we're going away to a cottage for a weekend or going on a week vacation. It's more just enjoying the simple things, keeping it simple, staying at home and laughing together. I'm currently making a raised garden bed in my backyard. But that's a fun project. I'm sure by next year I'll have great vegetables with the family. I got a great deal on a small little fishing boat. So that's my work in progress now. Working on that, trying to get it ready for the water, and trying to have a little bit of fun in a very difficult time, and always with the family.
I think that's the beauty of what's been happening is just spending more time with family, and it's not flashy, like you said. Yeah, I know this is the longest I've been spending with my parents since I was like 15. And it's totally unintentional, which has been, it's been really nice. My next question is for athletes during this. So I know a lot of athletes aren't doing what they're usually doing, especially hitting the ice, and trying to stay active as much as they can, but it's definitely not the same. As a physiotherapist, what are some helpful tips you have for them so they can avoid injury or to get back to their full potential?
The biggest advice I have is more to the organization, and that's get a great strength coach, because our strength coach has been phenomenal, right? Like we're venturing out of the therapy world and more into the performance world. And how do you juggle load? How do you maximize load, not knowing when your next game or next training camp would be? And I think our group, our strength coach Patty and Pierre Lard, they've been phenomenal with that, and I think that they're front and foremost on driving that. In terms of injuries, and man, when you have great strength coaches and great athletes, like mature athletes who get it, geez, it's all about load management, and that's the real prevention. There's no magic stretch that does it, and having athletes who, when they feel that they're a little off and they know that they didn't blow a tire, nothing's horrible, but they feel off, they know it's not right, they open up lines of communication, and we get to talk about it before it becomes an issue. So I think that I'm blessed to have athletes that, have the respect for us, that they call us and give us a chance to discuss before something big comes out of it. And the guys who have been injured understand the restrictions that COVID places on everything, have been extremely patient, have been extremely hardworking and dedicated. And we've taken this one step at a time, and we've used this break away from the ice to help them rebuild. And I'm blessed to work with a phenomenal team and phenomenal athletes that make my job a lot easier.
That's great. What about you? Are you practicing your mini sprints from the bench to like the dressing room?
Yeah. So our head athletic therapist, Graham Reinband, covers the bench most of the time. And our assistant ATPT, Matt Romano, is second up. So I'm kind of third in line for that. We like to tap into each other's strengths. So I let them take care of that. If I'm out on the ice, that's probably not a good thing. It's probably, we need more than two therapists. So that's not great. So I'm not practicing those sprints, but I'm working on my grip strength and all the manual therapy skills, and putting some socks together and squeezing them, getting ready.
That's good. That's good. What do you think the next upcoming year is going to look like for you then?
It's going to be tough. Like the NHL, the NHLPA working hard, trying to create protocols to keep not only their athletes but their staff safe. And we're hoping to finish off this season and have a successful season. And that would mean a very short off season, I would have to assume. And it throws off a yearly periodization. It's going to be back in the saddle fairly quickly. And I'm assuming next year is going to be a somewhat shortened or lengthened more than April type season. So we have to look at what parameters best fit the league's model. And then we're going to have to prepare our athletes for that. So it's going to be busy. It's kind of like the calm before the storm. It's like slowly we're getting into it, and it's like, okay, when those answers are, when those bricks are able to be laid, we're gonna have to run down that road. So we're getting ready for it.
Into Dskate presents Gametime, episode 6 with Donald Balmforth. Be sure to follow Donald on social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Gametime for more sports and diabetes content. On behalf of the Dskate team, I'm Anissa Gamble. See you at Puck Drop for the next episode of Gametime. Cheers.